laying the groundwork for self-initiations, and then some ideas about wiping and nighttime toilet training. With the hope that we can make this useful and practical as possible, okay, that you can use some of this information with children that you are working with or your own children. Okay, so first I'd like to talk about the readiness skills, because in our clinic's opinion, there's some misinformation about readiness skills for toilet training, which might actually discourage or lead parents with children with autism or other developmental disabilities to kind of delay toilet training. And absolutely, let me know if you can't have problems hearing me, because I can definitely get closer to the microphone. Okay, so traditionally pediatricians and psychologists have encouraged parents to wait until children show readiness signs, such as showing an interest in using the toilet beyond just flushing it, wanting to wear big kid underwear, letting parents know that they have a dirty diaper and that they actually need to be changed, and sensing when they have the urge to go, and then also communicating that with an adult. However, we think that these prerequisites can be extremely challenging for children with autism who might have difficulties with a number of these skills. Additionally, there's some other complications that we need to consider prior to doing some toilet training. So working with children that may have some social impairments, so they may lack social motivation, that they're like, you know what, I don't really care about you just telling me good job, or this is what I'm supposed to be doing just because. They might be less likely to imitate other individuals, less responsive to some of those social rewards, so social praise, so we might have to ramp up that using different types of rewards. Also, children oftentimes have communication deficits, so they might have difficulty understanding verbal directions, and there are a lot of steps for toilet training. So sometimes we'll have to break those down and use some visuals, so providing some extra supports to help with that. Poor expressive communication may also hinder or be a problem that we have to provide some additional information with or do some additional teaching. And then finally, some fears or anxieties. So some children may be fearful of even sitting on the toilet. The change of the routine, so the fact of now I'm not going to be wearing diapers anymore, and that can be a big adjustment for a lot of children. Noises in the bathroom, so the toilet flushing can be very anxiety provoking for many children. So those are all things that we have to consider and things that we have to plan for when working with children with developmental disabilities, that they may be experiencing some of those that we might have to do some additional training or planning around in order to ensure some success. And we'll talk about some of those different strategies today. So in terms of the revised readiness skills, so our clinic pared down to what we feel is the most reasonable for children with autism or other delays. First, we want to make sure that the child has the ability to stay dry for an hour and a half to 2 hours. So that gives us the confidence that the child is actually able to hold their urine, so they're not just going randomly throughout the day. So before we actually start toilet training, parents or educators might want to just check to see, you know what, is the child staying dry? So we're just going to do checks throughout the day with their pull-ups to make sure that their pull-up is staying dry for an hour and a half to 2 hours. If your child pees in the bathtub and you see that it's actually a stream of urine, that also gives us confidence that the child's actually able to hold their urine, because in order to have that stream, you actually have to have a lot in your bladder in order to make that stream. So that's something else that we might be looking for. So something else to consider if you see a child peeing and it's an actual stream, that's telling us, yes, that child is able to hold their urine. The other thing that we want to consider and think about before we start toilet training is constipation or other stomach issues that may impact toilet training. So if you're feeling constipated, you're going to have a difficult time telling, you know what, is it because I have a bowel movement, or is it because, you know, I'm just not feeling very good? So those are going to be medical conditions that we want parents to actually talk to their pediatrician and get resolved before we would want to start toilet training, because it can definitely interfere with a child's ability to sense, do I actually have to use the bathroom? Additionally, we want a minimal degree of compliance, because we actually need the child to sit on the toilet. These are things that we can work on, that we can build in compliance for this, and I will talk about that a little bit more today for kids that have difficulty sitting still for a long period of time, how we can actually get them to sit on the toilet for short periods of time, because that's going to increase success, and we're going to have to do that multiple times throughout the day. And then finally, we're going to look at some of the physical factors. So is a child able to sit upright for 3 minutes? Because that's typically what we recommend when we're doing toilet training, is sitting for 3 minutes on the toilet. Do they have the ability to walk to the bathroom? Are they able to pull down their pants and pull them up? If there's any problems with this, it just means that we might have to do some additional training. So if a child's having some difficulties pulling up their pants and pulling them down, we might have to train the child on how to do that and become independent before we would actually start toilet training. Some other things that we want parents to think about when toilet training is to make sure that they can jumpstart the program. So finding some extra time at the beginning to know, like, I'm going to be able to dedicate several days of being able to really implement a more intensive type of procedure so we can lay that groundwork for that child. So we found that if parents are able to dedicate several days in the beginning, they can really make some headway, which is really going to help with that toilet training. So what this means is limiting those activities that are going to take you out of your child's house, running errands, going to lots of appointments, even thinking about if there's multiple children in the house. You know, we want you to dedicate a lot of that time and those days early on just to paying attention and working on the toilet training with that one individual. So you might have to bring in like caregivers or somebody else to help with other children just to make sure that you can dedicate that amount of time to working on toilet training. This is not always possible, but the closer we can get to these things, the better for starting toilet training. So once we're ready, then we can start toilet training. We always recommend that parents focus on daytime first. Nighttime's going to come later, so we have to ensure daytime success before we would move on to doing nighttime toilet training. And I will talk about both of those today. So when preparing for toilet training, we first want to think about the environment. What do we need to ensure success? So some of the things that we want you to think about is inserts and footstools. So both of these things are very helpful for kids. The inserts we know are helpful for kids that may be a little bit more anxious about sitting on the toilet. So sometimes that helps to decrease some of the anxiety. The footstools are also recommended not only to increase stability on the toilet, but that will give the child a better natural position to actually sitting on the toilet, which will help to increase success, especially for like bowel movements. We also want parents to make sure that the bathroom's comfortable. So thinking about children that may be sensitive to light is you might have to change the light bulbs. Not so much now because it's really warm outside, but in the wintertime thinking is it chilly in the bathrooms? Because oftentimes bathrooms get cold in the winter. So do we need like a space heater or something warm just to make that child a little bit more comfortable? All right, the other thing that we want to consider before we start toilet training is thinking about communication. So communicating for the bathroom can be a real challenge for kids with autism or other developmental delays that may have some communication deficits. So it's very complex. First, the child has to be aware of the sensation that they have to go to the bathroom. They have to stop what they're doing, which can be a challenge, especially if you're doing something that's really preferred, like playing on an iPad. Ooh, I don't really want to take the time to actually go to the bathroom. I'd rather sit and play on the iPad. Then they have to alert someone by communicating, and then they land in the bathroom, which is usually not super reinforcing for kids to begin with, hanging out in the bathroom. So because of the complexity, self-initiation and independent communication for the toilet is accomplished typically as one of the last steps. So that would be that self-initiation. But we want to start the groundwork for this early on. So as soon as we start actually working on cooperative sitting, so getting the child to sit on the toilet, we want to start working on that, preparing them for the communication. So some recommendations that we have for that verbal communication is thinking about what words you're going to use to indicate like that you have to go to the bathroom. Typically we would recommend like bathroom or toilet versus potty, just for the fact that a lot of kids we work with have difficulties with change. And so if you're thinking about a kid that might be turning 11 or 12 eventually, saying like I have to go potty might not be as acceptable as saying like I have to go to the bathroom. So those are going to be some of the things that you may want to consider before starting potty training, is using those same terms, because we also want to use that same verbiage each time so that individual knows this word means I'm going to go to the bathroom. For children that may be nonverbal, we can use a picture exchange communication card. We'd recommend actually taking a picture of the bathroom that they're going to be using. Over time, we can generalize that and change the pictures to other bathrooms that they may be using, but sometimes it's nice to have that actual picture of the actual bathroom they're going to be using to start with. And also, just in case you're not familiar with signs, that's just the sign for toilet. So if you're using sign language, you can definitely do that as well. So once you're initiating a trip to the bathroom, you want to have the child first sign or communicate, bathroom. And then you're actually going to go to the bathroom. And once you get to the toilet, you're actually going to have them say that again. And that's just to strengthen that connection between this means I'm going to the bathroom. So we actually recommend that you do 2 verbal prompts. So a prompt when you're headed towards the bathroom, and then another prompt having them verbalize again prior to sitting on the toilet. So once you're in the bathroom. The other thing while we're preparing for toilet training is thinking of motivating your child. So that's one of the most important components for toilet training, because most people in general are not intrinsically motivated to use the bathroom. So it's important to give really good and powerful rewards. So when thinking about what rewards you're going to be using, is rewards that are going to be easily provided. So edibles are really great for that, such as like M&Ms, Hershey Kisses, things that you can just give the child, and you don't have to think about like, oh, I'm going to have to take this away in 5 minutes, because that may start some other issues as well. So when possible, edibles are a great one to use. They're consumable, and like I said, you don't have to take them away. And then we have those saved for the next time. If your child is motivated by food, give them something that is really highly preferred, that they don't get all the time, that we can save solely for toileting. So it may not always be the most healthy, but the one that they're really going to like is actually going to make toileting, the whole process, go faster. Something else that you're going to want to keep in mind, depending on where the child is in the grand scheme of toilet training, if they're having a hard time just sitting on the toilet, you're going to want to think about, I'm going to have 2 separate rewards. So first, we're going to have a reward just to work on getting an individual to sit on the toilet and stay on the toilet for periods of time, and then thinking we're going to need a little bit bigger or better reward for actually reinforcing those voids, so when they actually have a void on the toilet. So there's going to be 2 different rewards that we might want to be thinking about. If your child's already sitting on the toilet and that's not a problem, then this is not going to be as big of an issue. Then you would just have that one reward for having successful voids on the toilet. Something else to think about with rewards is to make sure that they're not freely available. So if your child really likes goldfish, but they have goldfish every single day for a snack, having that same reward for going to the bathroom or sitting in the toilet is probably not going to be very reinforcing. They may not be very motivated, and they'll get used to that faster, that they'll say, you know what, no thanks, this isn't something that I'm super interested in right now. I'll wait till my snack. So just something to think about. So when we have those rewards, we really want to save those rewards just for the toileting, so that they're not getting them frequently throughout the day. We can also pair a reward with praise. If your child likes it, not all individuals really care that much about praise. It's completely individualized to what that individual likes. Some children are really motivated by some social praise. So we want to really be thinking about what's really going to be motivating this individual. So you can definitely pair, a treat with verbal praise, like, great job, going potty on the toilet or something like that. So nice work, something like that. And then finally, something else to think about is you may have to vary some of these rewards, especially so if you're using some edibles like treats. If they're going and we're working on just sitting on the toilet, a child may get used to sitting on the toilet and getting those rewards throughout the day. And they might say, you know what, I've had enough M&Ms today. I'm fine. I'm ready to just get out of this room. So you may have to think about switching that up. So there's a couple different things that the child may like. You may want to have both of those available, just in case you start to see the child saying, like, I'm not really into that. So if they're dropping it, if they're just walking around and not consuming it right away, those are good signs saying, you know what, this is no longer something that this child's interested in. We're probably going to have to switch to something else. So, and the other thing that we want to make sure is that it's immediate. So we're using the 3-second rule. So if we're having a void, as soon as they start to void within 3 seconds, we want them to have that reward on the toilet. So a lot of people don't always like to hear this, but we like to have those rewards in the bathroom so that they're getting them right away. And that's just so that it's immediate. So it's not like, all right, I went to the bathroom and now we're walking to the kitchen, I'm gonna sit at the table. At that point, the child may not know why they're getting that reward. Was it because I walked out of the bathroom? Was it because I walked to the kitchen? Was it because I sat down? If we have an immediate and we give it to that child, as soon as we start hearing that void, when it's like within 3 seconds, they know, oh, it's not because I just sat on the toilet, it's because I'm eliminating on the toilet. That's why I'm getting that reward. So that's why we recommend having those rewards and bringing those into the bathroom. So if parents are having a hard time that they're like, you know what, I wasn't able to run and get them, sometimes it's easier just to keep them in the bathroom somewhere that the child wouldn't be able to reach. So up high where they can't reach, like in a cabinet. Sometimes for kids that are really into getting into things, even keeping it in the lock box that you can unlock that as soon as the kid gets into the bathroom so they can have that reward immediately. So now that we're done with some of the prep work, there's some additional decisions that we have to make in regards to toilet training. So one of the things we have to think about is using a potty versus using an actual toilet. So this is a gray area that we always kind of leave towards parents to determine what they feel is going to be most appropriate for their child. In general, if we think about it, a potty is typically less intimidating and it's more comfortable for a lot of kids. One of the problems with that is the transition later on. We're going to eventually have to transition from using that potty to a regular toilet. So that's one consideration that you want to think about. The other consideration, because I know a lot of times we hear families like, well, the potty is easy because we can keep it in the living room and it just makes it very easy. That's not something that we would recommend. We would recommend that you keep it actually in the bathroom if you choose to use a potty. The reason for that is there's going to be less changes later on. So the child will know, like, nope, we only go potty in the bathroom. So it may not be as super convenient, but it may be less intimidating for somebody that might be really anxious about sitting on a regular toilet. Like I said, there are some downfalls to that though too. Like I said, you have to transition later on to the regular toilet. So as far as the regular toilet, the plus is that they're everywhere. So if you're going out in public, it's going to help with that generalization later on. They're at schools, so we can use regular toilets anywhere. One of the minuses, though, is that the child may be less relaxed on the toilet. So that would be a problem for children. And once again, that if they're really anxious about that, it may be a little bit more difficult. So the other benefit of using regular toilet is that you don't have to do that transition from the potty to the toilet. So it's sometimes easier just to start out with what you're going to end up with, which would be like the regular toilet. And like I said earlier, there are some additional things that we can do to make a regular toilet more comfortable, like using the footstools and the inserts. Particularly for boys, some things that you're going to want to consider that parents have to decide. Oftentimes parents want boys to be thinking about or attempt to have their boys stand up to urinate right away. We feel that it's much more beneficial to actually do this waiting and have them sit to start. And the reasons for this are some of these questions that I want you to think about. So first of all, do we know that the child can distinguish between when they need to urinate and defecate? It's really hard to be able to distinguish that for most children, which leads us to say, let's just sit that way. No matter what that sensation is, we're sitting down on the toilet. And also the coordination. So you have to be really coordinated to do the standing up. And focused. A lot of kids that are really young are probably not going to be super coordinated and they might not have the focus to be able to stand. So we generally recommend sitting for boys for toilet training. Later on we can work on the standing if that's something that parents want to do. but typically that's easier. Children are generally more relaxed when they're sitting versus standing. And they have to actually be able to do this for several minutes. Like I said, standing there for a boy for 3 minutes, that would probably be really hard for most children. So, which leads us to usually push for let's do sitting. The other thing that comes up very frequently is pull-ups versus underwear. So the obvious benefit of wearing a pull-up is that you don't have that mess to clean up. So it is a huge benefit for that. However, there's a lot of disadvantages for using the pull-up. So pull-ups, when we think about it, it's designed to pull wetness away, which definitely makes kids more comfortable. And then it's also difficult to know when the child had an accident, and that's going to be something that's going to be crucial to doing toilet training, is knowing exactly when that child's having that accident, which is the benefits of underwear. So it allows parents to know exactly when the accident occurred. And it also allows the child to feel the wetness. Something that parents frequently ask us about are, wearing pull-ups with underwear in them, or wearing, I think there's like the plastic that you can use. We strongly recommend that you do not use those because, like I said, it will make it more difficult for parents or other individuals to know that child's having the accident. The other problem with using those is that children start to get desensitized to that wetness, that they're like, this doesn't bother me as much, because we can't tell right away that that child had an accident. So they may be sitting in that for, like 15 minutes. We don't know. And then we know that research shows children do get used to that. So we recommend avoiding that and just using the underwear. So always avoid putting pull-ups on over underwear. The exceptions for when it's okay to use pull-ups, because there are some times that we're going to say, you know what, there's some times that you will probably still want to use the pull-ups. Nighttime. Like I said earlier, we want to focus on daytime toileting first. So it's absolutely fine to keep them in pull-ups at nighttime. If you're out in public running a bunch of errands and you're not going to have time to do this or change, absolutely have the pull-ups on. And then oftentimes at schools. So if the school, if that's not a primary goal for them to be working on toilet training at this time, then have the child in pull-ups to make it easier until they're partly mastered. And then we absolutely want to generalize that over into the school system so that they develop those skills that I can use the toilet here, but I can also use the toilet other places. So we will get to that point. But the pull-up is that green light for it's okay to urinate, which is the other reason why we just want to go straight underwear. Because we don't want to give the child, it's hard to make that switch because they've been going to the bathroom in their pull-up for a long period of time, and now we're saying, nope, that's not okay to do, and that's a big adjustment, so it's easier to make that transition if we move straight to the underwear. So like I talked about earlier, we do want to think about some anxiety. So some kids may be anxious about actually sitting on the toilet, and then we're just going to have to take our time and just work on that. So for some children that are extremely anxious about sitting on the toilet, is we may have the lid down to start with, and they're just sitting in their clothes, just practicing just sitting on the toilet, and we'd have to do really small steps. Then moving to we're just sitting on the toilet with the lid up. And it's basically going to be a tiered system in order to get them finally to where they can sit on the toilet with their pants pulled down. I haven't had a lot of kids that are to that point of being super anxious, but it does happen on occasion, so just something to think about. The other things to think about is flushing. So some kids are that noise of flushing is very aversive, and it may be punishing for some kids. I've had some kids that are the opposite, that love the flushing of the toilet. That's like their biggest reward, that we use that for other things as well, that they can go and earn trips to flush the toilet. So it's thinking about that. You can absolutely use that as a reward. But if a child's really anxious about the toilet flushing, we may do that last thing before we leave the room. We may have the child first leave the room. We might have to do some training to kind of desensitize that child for the sound of the toilet flushing by using rewards specifically to kind of combat that. As it's hard to be anxious when you're getting lots of rewards and treats very frequently. So sometimes we'll have to do that in using rewards to make children first working on decreasing their anxiety level before we actually move on to toilet training. The other thing that I want you to consider is some visuals. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about too. Visuals really help for individuals that may have difficulties being able to follow multiple steps. It makes things a little bit more clear for exactly what's going on and what those expectations are. So one of the first visuals that we talked about, or that we're going to talk about today, is the first then concept. So this helps with cooperative sitting to have our kids to sit reasonably calm and without a struggle for approximately 3 minutes, because that's the goal, is to get a kid to sit for 3 minutes on the toilet. Research shows that that's a good period of time for having a child to sit to have the opportunity to have a void. So that's what we start with. The first thing is to help them understand, though, what they're getting for sitting, because sitting on the toilet, we don't want it to be the most fun thing in the world, because we want the child to go and say, you know what, I want to actually get out of this bathroom. The only time that we would go the opposite end and make the bathroom a more fun place is for children that would be extremely anxious. Otherwise, we want to be careful to not make the bathroom the most fun place ever, because I have seen where kids then just want to move into the bathroom. They're bringing everything into the bathroom, which we don't want, because that makes it a problem for the whole family then of trying to get into the bathroom. So the first thing concept makes things very clear. So you might already be familiar with this, but I'm going to just go over it for individuals that may not be familiar with this concept. This basically lets kids understand that sequence, that first they need to do something and they'll get something. So this would actually be what the visual would look like. It would be first sit on the toilet, then we get the Hershey Kiss. So for toileting, we set up a display, and then that really sets the groundwork for, you know what, I'm going to do this for a small period of time, and then I actually get something really fun for this. If the child isn't familiar with this concept, then we actually recommend that parents teach this prior to the toilet training, so times outside of the bathroom. For example, you might have a first then lesson in the kitchen. So first we get candy and then we get a cookie, or first we get a chip and then we get goldfish. So at first both of those are positive, and then we change that the first is a little bit less positive, but you still get something extremely positive at the end. So we find that kids will pay more attention when they know that there's good things in store for them, and it really helps to facilitate that cooperative sitting. The other thing that we pair with the cooperative sitting is a visual timer. So the first then chart lets them know that if they sit, they'll get a reward, but the visual timer actually lets them know that they have to stay on the toilet for a certain period of time in order to get that reward. So similar to the first then chart, it's easiest to introduce outside of the bathroom and for something positive. So let's say that your child really likes juice. So then you might have them get familiar with this concept by saying, first showing them the timer, and then as soon as the timer runs out, they get their juice, so that they can see, I get something as soon as the timer beeps. The timer that we have right there is actually called the time timer. You can get that, there's free apps on the iPad or most phones that you can get, and that actually shows the red. As soon as the red disappears, then you get your reward. And kids, I found that are extremely effective for most children, because it gives something that's very clear and concrete versus then using, like a digital timer, which is more difficult for children to understand. And then the nice thing about the time timer is that it has very short durations, so you can start with, for children that may have difficulties that because we'll have to probably increase the amount of time. Most kids are just not going to say, I'm going to sit for 3 minutes on the toilet. A lot of children will have to work on increasing that time, and I'll talk about that shortly. But it allows us to start with like just 10 seconds. 10 seconds we wait, the timer goes off, then I get something good. So it's important that parents should be the one to also hold that timer, because I've had too many times that kids are playing with the timer or changing it, which makes it to be a problem. So always having parents hold the timer. You don't give it to the child, but that way they can still see it. And now your child has a little bit of something to do while they're on the toilet. They can watch the timer, and I found most kids really do enjoy actually watching the timer go down. It's also a good idea to do some moderately fun activities. So looking at a book together, because eventually we want them to sit for 3 minutes. So looking at a book together, singing a song, but we don't want to sing like a really exciting song because we actually want them to kind of stay seated and not get too overstimulated because we want them to be relaxed on the toilet. So we can do something that's moderately fun. We don't want it to be the funnest activity that they're doing all day in the bathroom. The only time, like I said, that we would actually change that would be for children that may be extremely anxious about going to the bathroom. Then we're going to ramp up the fun level of the bathroom. The other thing, so I talked just briefly about this. So once we have the visuals to help kids understand what to expect, we use a method called shaping to build up the skill. So shaping involves breaking down the goal into small cases. So for example, to get a child to sit for 3 minutes, we're going to start to sit for just small periods of time to build up their ability to sit, to build up their understanding of if I sit using that timer, I'm earning access to preferred things. So we may start with 15 seconds. So after that timer goes off, 15 seconds, they would get that reward and they would get off the toilet. After that seems pretty easy for them, then we'd bump that up. So we change that expectation to, you're going to sit for 30 seconds. You sit for 30 seconds. Once that seems they're fine with that, then we'd bump it up again. So we would keep doing that until we get up to that 3 minutes, and then we'd stop because that's the goal. So during these practices, if the child wants to get off the toilet early, we gently block attempts, which is why it's so important to start with really short durations, because we want to build in the likelihood for success. So we want to start off with short periods that the child's going to be able to get that reward and be successful, versus if we start off with 3 minutes trying to get a child to sit there, they might be frequently getting off the toilet that we'd be having to guide them back to the toilet. So critical to think about when we're starting toilet training is sitting for small periods of time and rewarding that. Reward them when the visual timer's done, but while they're still sitting on the toilet, so it's the reward for sitting on the toilet rather than getting off. So as soon as the timer beeps, we give them that, then they get off the toilet. So it's not, I'm getting rewarded for getting off the toilet. So that's just another critical point that I wanted to point out. Okay, so now it's just time to put it all together for the training for cooperative sitting. So first, we'd prompt the child to communicate for the bathroom. So when you get right in front of the toilet, we prompt them to communicate it again. So on the way to the bathroom and then right on the toilet. So there's that relationship between communication for the bathroom and the toilet itself. We're going to show them the first then chart so they'll know what they're working for. We're going to prompt them to pull down their pants, but we don't want them to pull off their pants, because the children oftentimes will get to the point that they're like, great, this is the time to strip down, and it's just going to make it easier for later on. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with Seinfeld. I remember George Costanza. There was an entire episode on that. But we want them to keep their pants on because it's going to be much easier than when we go to generalize. Because if you're using the bathroom at the store and your kid feels like they have to completely disrobe, that's going to be a lot more work for you. So keep the clothes on, just pulling down the pants. And I've had a couple of times that I found out that that was being done, and it just makes a lot more work, because then you think, oh, we've mastered toilet training, but now we have to actually go back and master keeping clothes on. So it just adds later work, or work for later on if we don't keep that clothes on. Okay, so then they're sitting on the toilet. We're going to block those attempts to exit or get off the toilet. We're going to reward them. So we're using that visual timer, reward them, like I said, while they're still sitting in that toilet before they get off. And then you're going to want to have practice sessions multiple times a day to help them gradually develop the skill. So ideally, as cooperative sitting becomes easier and easier, and they're sitting for longer durations towards that 3 minutes, very sneakily, we want to start to decrease the amount of time or reward that we're offering, because we're going to really ramp that reward up for then successful voids. So once sitting is no longer a problem, we want to decrease the amount of reward for that, and then we're going to really ramp up the rewards for successful voids. And so that's one of the reasons why I said, if we're continuing to use the same reward, that's where we really want to decrease it for sitting, because if we're using that same reward for voiding, we want it to be really special, or using that two-tiered system. So you have a different reward for cooperative sitting and then an even better reward for successful voids. All right. So now that we're done, we're sitting on the toilet for 3 minutes at a time, we're going to actually work on increasing those successful voids. So there's different approaches to initiating and increasing successful voids. Some involve very gradual steps in training, and some require we take up full residency actually in the bathroom. So you're staying in there all day with your child. And I'll tell you, our procedure falls somewhere in between that. So it goes from the work for Fox and Asen, but we modified it just a little bit. So here's the components that we use in my clinic. Is underwear full time. We're doing scheduled sits. So starting scheduled sits, so we're taking them to the bathroom every 30 to 45 minutes, which is a lot. That's why we recommend, especially for families that have other children, you may need somebody else to help to kind of keep an eye on the other kids, especially if they're young, because you're spending a lot of time in that bathroom and going frequently. It's important for parents to wear a timer, because it's really easy to lose track when you're going that frequently to miss those times. So every 30 minutes, you'd go to the bathroom, use that same procedure I talked about earlier. We're sitting for 3 minutes for that period of time. If they have a void, great. If they don't, then we get off the toilet and we still set back for 30 minutes to go back. So reset. We also reset after accidents. For example, so if there's 30 minutes sit, so there's an accident at 12:40, we would still bump for 30 minutes for our next scheduled sit then at 1:10. So another reason why it's really important to have a timer, because this can get really complex and it's nice to be on track. We're rewarding any successful voids, because those first couple times, it's typically, we're taking you so often that the first couple times is I actually accidentally went to the bathroom on the toilet, but I got all of this praise, I got all of these rewards, it was super awesome. Maybe I should do that again. So that's where we start to see that success and building that success, is that we had that void on the toilet. We got access to praise, edibles. We're also getting off the toilet early. So even if it's just a little bit, we would still, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if they're done, we would still recommend you let the child off the toilet, because that's another part of the reward, because usually sitting on the toilet's not super motivating. So we want to provide as much reinforcement as possible. We're also going to build in some consequences for accidents at this point. And the other important part that usually parents are like, oh, this is such a pain, is collecting data. And that part is so critical, and I'll talk about the importance of why we need to collect that data, because that's really going to lead us to this next steps of what are we going to do, what are, are we going to spread time apart for scheduled sits? What are the next steps? Do we need to ramp it up? Is this effective? It answers all of those questions if we're collecting data. So if your child hasn't had successful voids at that point, some things that we want you to consider. So after we've had everything in place for a while, there are a few additional strategies that we can do to help promote those initial voids.
Can you say what a while is?
So I would say if it's been several weeks and you have not had a successful void in the toilet, so maybe like 2 weeks, because some kids, and it really depends on each individual. So it depends on functioning level, things like that. But we want to give them a period of time. If we're taking them every 30 minutes, it's been like a week, and we've religiously been taking them every single day, like that, then I would say yes. That at that point we'd bump it up.
We're thinking in the weekend.
So
we're doing it for a weekend.
So if you're doing it the whole day, and that's where a lot of parents will do it for parts of day, you could definitely try some of these strategies. So if you've done it in the entire day from morning to evening, and you've been taking them religiously every 30 minutes, no successful void, it'd be okay definitely just try some of these strategies. So one of the things that we want to consider is increasing the value of those rewards. So making the rewards more powerful, motivating. Maybe the rewards we're using are not true reinforcers. So it might be a reward, but it's not actually something like that I would really super want. It might just be okay. We can do warm water prompting. So what this is actually using like a pitcher, like that you'd water plants with like the long little end, and it's especially helpful for boys. So that we just have warm water flow out right above the genitals while they're on the toilet. Sometimes that just helps to relax them a little bit. Usually we recommend that you do that though before you'd actually get on the toilet. So it might be something that if you're giving baths, that you might be doing the word, just practicing with that, so the child just gets used to it. So it's not like, wait, what are we doing on this toilet? Why do we have this pitcher? So they're a little bit more familiar with that. So I'd practice it first in the bathtub. Once if they seem like they like it, if it seems interested in it, then that's something that you can use on the toilet, and it's just usually, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, quick question. Explain that again. You said for the boys. You said,
so you can also use it for girls. I've found it more effective for boys.
While they're on the toilet?
So while they're on the toilet, usually just to get them used to the concept though, I'd first practice in the bathtub. So like when they're taking a bath. So basically we're just having a water pitcher, and that we're having water just flow over the genitals, and it's typically that we use that for, so if kids might feel a little bit anxious, and sometimes that warm water helps just to relax our bodies or our muscles. That makes it a little bit easier to do that void. So if you're feeling really tense, it's going to be much harder for you to actually eliminate. So that would be something that you could definitely try.
Is this for urination only or also bowel?
So usually I've just used it for urine. If you're having, and it depends on what's going on with bowel movements, because they're a little bit more complex to figure out, are they constipated? Usually that's our first thing, is let's talk to, pediatrician or GI, just to make sure that there's nothing else going on intestinally. But there's also some techniques that you can do with just some like gentle pushing that sometimes helps with the bowel movements. So you can do that. But this is typically just for urine. The other thing that you can do is a more rigorous scheduled sits. So we can definitely bump that up, which is why it's really important to keep track on data to see, if we're having any successes. So we can bump that up, that we're doing 5 minutes on the toilet, and 10 minutes off and 5 minutes on. So we're really bumping that scheduled. So the time that you're sitting on the toilet and the amount of times that you're going to the toilet. And this would be more consistent with that really, really rigorous, you're spending all day actually pretty much in the bathroom because you're on the toilet every 10 minutes. And the reason why we would do that would just be to just accidentally, or so we were increasing the chances that you're accidentally going to have a void on the toilet. So you can definitely do that. The other thing that you can absolutely do, and a lot of these are not that big of a deal, so you can do them pretty quickly. So increasing that fluid intake. So and that's just, the more you're drinking, the more you're going to urinate. We don't want to overload them on fluids, so this is like the recommended amount from the Institute of Medicine for a child's age in amount of fluid that they need. And that's, like I said, we just want to make sure that they're drinking, that they're hydrated, because that's going to also increase the likelihood that they're going to have those voids. So if you've tried for 2 days and it's really intense, that you've been on top of it, that you haven't gone anywhere, super dedicated, they would be fine to start doing some of these things. If you're finding, like I've done toilet training, but because we see this a lot, especially for kids that are during school time, that it might be we're only able to do it as soon as they get home and it's for a couple hours a day. I would give it a lot longer. So I would give it a couple weeks, just more of the regular routine before we ramp it up to this. Because this is a lot of work too. So the other things that we want to do is building in some of those consequences for accidents. So along with successful voids, we're still going to have accidents. So you're going to give that reward that you give the child to let them know what you want them to do, but we'll also have those consequences. And the reason for that is to immediately teach what you don't want, to help and to also help to motivate those get them to avoid some of those accidents. So what we do is positive practice. And on the next slide, I actually have the steps for positive practice. So this allows the actual overlearning of the correct behavior and provides an annoying consequence for those accidents. So, like I said, by doing this, it teaches a child to, this is not what we're going to do, so we're not going to, wet our pants. And the important thing with positive practice is that immediate consequence. So that's why we want you to be present, that you're going to be right there. So as soon as you see that child having an accident, you can immediately implement this. So things that you might want to consider is making sure your child's wearing pants that it's easy to tell if they're having an accident. So depending on the material, sometimes it's hard to tell. If there's a lot of layers, it's sometimes hard to tell when a child might immediately have an accident. So those are things that I want you to think about is, what is your child wearing when you're implementing these things? So, because I want to be able to see as soon as they're having the accident to implement this consequence. So positive practice, what we do is we give a neutral reminder. So I don't want to have like a really big reaction. This is hard to do sometimes, especially when your child has had multiple accidents. It's easy to lose your temper. So take a couple deep breaths. Tell yourself this is part of the process. Try to set up the expectation like, we know your child's good. All children are going to have accidents as part of the learning process. Like I said, it's hard to not get upset at these points, but we don't want to have that big reaction, because a lot of kids get really interested in that. Oh wow, they really don't like that, and that can actually impact the toilet training. We want to guide the child to the bathroom and have them pull down their pants, guide to sit on the toilet. We guide them to stand up and pull up their pants, and we repeat this for 3 times. So it's not just we're going to the bathroom one time, we're doing this multiple times. We're going back to the spot we had the accident, saying no wet pants, guide you to the bathroom. So basically what we're doing is going through that whole toileting routine multiple times.
Right then, right after the accident.
Right, as soon as you see those wet pants, you start this. And that's why it's so important, because it gives, the faster we figure this out, that kid will figure out, oh, as soon as I have that accident, that's what's causing me to have to do this consequence, because they could choose to go to the bathroom once and it's just over with if they went correctly on the bathroom. Otherwise, we're going through this multiple times, which most kids really do not like, because it takes up time that we were playing a fun game, and now it's even longer for me to get back to playing on my iPad. So this is a lot of extra work for them.
And are they sitting on the toilet again for 3 minutes?
So you can do, it doesn't have to be the full 3 minutes. No, it's just the consequence. So it doesn't have to be the full 3 minutes. It can be just a couple seconds, and then get up. We go back, but you go back to the spot they had the accident and repeat this. So it's multiple times that you're going through this procedure.
While they're still wet or messy?
We do while they're still wet. Yep. So they're still wet. After we've done through this, then we have them help change. Absolutely. But yeah, this. So yeah, it's just so that it also provides that concept too of pointing out like no wet pants. So this is our wet pants. So with the poop, you may have to do a little bit of cleanup. So this is much easier to do with urine. If it's poop, you may have to do some preliminary cleanup. Otherwise, it's going to be really messy.
If there's a void in the middle of this process,
you would still reward that. Absolutely. So if they do have a void when they're on the toilet as well, you would still reward that, because you're rewarding the consequence, and then you could stop with the positive practice. If you're finding that they're doing that frequently, that's when you'd want to talk to another professional about what the next steps would be. I will tell you, usually that doesn't happen. Most of the time when kids void, they've fully eliminated. I have not had any parents ever say like, but then they do that and then they also pee on the toilet. That doesn't happen very frequently. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but if you're seeing that frequently, then I would call, behavioral specialists to talk about the next steps.
When you say never prompt for communication, what does that mean?
So in this, so versus the protocol that we're using for going to the bathroom, that we're having the child, so when we're taking them for scheduled sits, we're having them prompt up, sign for bathroom or whatever, and then before they sit on the toilet, we're having them sign. We're not doing that with positive practice. So you're not having them, sign to go to the bathroom during this process, because we want to minimize the amount of attention. So the other thing to think about too, which is a good point, is if a child really likes any type of attention, sometimes I've even taken out the no wet pants, because I've had a couple kids that even saying that has been enough that they're like, ooh, I really like when they say that. So for a child that's really, really into attention, you may eliminate that part of this routine, and then you would just go through that same process. It's the pairing together over and over that the child eventually figures out, like, oh, this is why this is going on. Otherwise, if a kid's not really into that, you can say no wet pants. But the no prompting is just not having them request or sign for, or say that they're going to the bathroom, because we want to minimize that amount of attention, which is why we don't want this to be fun. We want to be like a robot. We want to have a neutral face. Like I said, this takes practice on parents and educators' part, because it's hard not to have those reactions, especially if you've gone through this numerous times in a day, because this part's not fun for parents either. It's a lot of work. So we just want to be like a robot, very mechanical, a neutral face, so not doing a lot of smiling or making other faces. And then, like I said, we're not having them prompt for communication, so we're not having them request to go to the bathroom when you're doing this. You're just physically guiding them through each of these steps.
When you have an aggressive child.
I've done this with, if a child is super aggressive, then we might have to work on aggression before we can work on some toileting. So I've had to do that before. So if a child becomes extremely aggressive with sitting on the toilet, that's where we would have to go back to minimize levels of aggression with the toileting. Yeah. And we'd probably have some additional procedures in, depending on what's going on with the aggression during this, that there's probably going to be other stuff going on. The other thing that we can use is a wet stop. We usually use wet stops for nighttime toileting, but it is possible to use them during daytime toileting. The purpose of the wet stop is that we're discovering that accident very quickly. So as I discussed already, it's so important to discover as soon as your child's having that accident, so you can go straight into that positive practice. So what the wet stop is, so it's actually a mechanical or electric device, and I meant to bring one today. So this part actually clips onto the child up here, and it's an actual alarm. So, and then there's a sensor that connects to this, and that's the sensor that connects, and it goes under the shirt, and it connects to the front part of the underwear. As soon as that sensor gets wet, it causes this alarm to go off. So, and it's relatively loud. So as if you're nearby, you can hear that alarm, and you can go, your child immediately has had an accident, and you can come straight in and start with that positive practice. We also use these for nighttime wetting, and they're extremely effective for nighttime accidents. So if you're really busy and you're like, I always miss when they have an accident, this may be something that we would recommend, is because it gives you a little bit more freedom. They vary in prices. I know our clinic does sell them. I think that we charge like $35. There's really nice ones that you can get. They have no wires at all, and I think they run now about $150. So they very much range in price. But it does make it easier if you're not able to be right there watching. And if you have a lot of other kids, that it's easy to get distracted, because that absolutely happens. And it can also be used to nighttime for nighttime toileting. But this allows us to kind of swoop in and implement that consequence. So the next thing is that data collection. So I already talked about the importance of this. It allows us to track progress. It allows us to know when we need to increase that duration for sitting, because we don't want kids to just become dependent on a time schedule. We want to set it up that they're going to be able to start to self-initiate later on. So if they're never having accidents because they're always voiding on the toilet, we want to start to bump that up. And the rule of thumb is we actually have you calculate percentages. So this is what we actually give parents is the time between voids. So this would be like a 60-minute. We would start off 30 minutes. Have you had successes while on the toilets? Any accidents? Any comments? Sometimes I have parents even keep track of the time too, just to make sure that we've been able to take them every 30 minutes because let's face it, sometimes we get really busy that we might be missing those opportunities, and it's important for us to know because that's going to change treatment recommendations. So what we actually do is we calculate the percent of successful voids, which is the number of successes divided by that total number of successes plus accidents. And what we're looking for is 80%. So that's our number that we generally look for, is if you're having 80% of successes, so successful voids in the toilet, then we want to bump up the amount of time for those scheduled sits. So if we've had 3 days that we've had 80% successful voids, and like I said, that's just the number of successes over the total successes and accidents, then we'd increase the time by 15 minutes. So if you've had 3 days like that, bump up the time. So if you started with 30 minutes, there's 80% of the time your child or the individual's having successful voids on the toilet, bump it up 15 minutes. 3 additional days, there's still 80%, bump it up an additional 15 minutes. And the reason for that is because that gives children more opportunity. You're not taking them as frequently. They're probably, at first, they may have some more accidents, but the goal is that they're also, they want to avoid those accidents. We've had lots of practice by this point of requesting to go to the bathroom. They should be making that connection as well, and they should start to self-initiate. So that's what we want, is children to start to make those requests. I have to go to the bathroom. So I have just a couple more slides, and I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to kind of go through these, but definitely if there's questions, let me know. So we want to, this is for self-initiating, is basically we're wanting to fade those prompts. So we're going to start to fade. So if we're also physically guiding a child to the bathroom to help them with that, is if we're doing a full prompt, so we're using both hands, is I may just touch the child's back. Eventually I just want the child to walk with me. So we're taking ourselves out of the equation. Same thing for in the bathroom. So if we're sitting right next to the child, eventually we want to start taking ourselves, as the child starts to increase their success, we start to bring ourselves out of the bathroom. So we might just move back a little bit, get closer to the door, stand right outside the bathroom, and that's all based off of a child being successful in the bathroom. So we're building on having those child's to prompts, so that's why we're increasing that duration between sits. And we want the child to be able to go 2 to 3 hours, and that, I'm wanting to avoid some of those consequences, such as positive practice. And then we're wanting to fade out our prompts. Some other things to think about, so this is just a strategy for some children that may have difficulties wiping, is that we can absolutely teach those skills. So we need to teach them to tear off the toilet paper, wipe from the bottom up, check the toilet paper, and wipe again. This is really helpful for bowel movements. Something that you can have a child do just to practice is using like Nutella or something else that you have just on the kitchen table that you put out, and you have the child basically practice, wipe, oh, is it dirty? I need to wipe again. So you can practice that too, and that will just help with when they actually have to wipe for bowel movements, because I see that frequently, that children aren't wiping adequately enough, and we're just basically teaching them if there's anything on the toilet paper, then we need to wipe again. And this is just another strategy you can use to practice that. You can also use visual schedules. There's special toilet paper you can get that has pictures on it. You can also have children count the number of squares if they're able to count for how much toilet paper they should be using. But this is just a schedule of getting a child. So first we get the toilet paper, then we tear the toilet paper, stand up and wipe up with the toilet paper. So you can use visual schedules for individual parts of the toileting, or you can use it for larger chunks too. And then just for nighttime toileting, I'm going to briefly go over this. So nighttime always comes after we've mastered daytime toileting. So until we have mastered daytime toileting, we don't recommend that you start nighttime toileting. We also, some things to consider. Generally, we start nighttime toileting between 6 to 7 years. You want to consider medication, what medication children are on. Some medications make it really hard for kids to wake up at night, such as the Risperdal and Clonidine can make it hard for kids to wake up. If they're having an empty bladder when they go to bed, but they're having frequent accidents, they're flooding at night, the flooding the bed, that tells us there may be some medical concern, and we would want you to talk to the pediatrician about that. And then reverting. So if they've had months that they haven't had accidents and they start having accidents again, that's just another sign that we would say we would want to first check in with a pediatrician just to make sure there's no medical reasons, like infections that may be causing this. So there's prerequisites: independent use of the bathroom and self-initiating during the daytime without having accidents. So there's two versions that we can use. The first is modified nighttime environment. I've seen this a lot, that kids are just afraid to get out of bed. So maybe we just have to add some night lights, things like that, make it a little bit easier for them to get up and go to the bathroom. And then another thing is just one wake up per night, just so they can empty the bladder. It allows them to practice at night and reduces the burden on the bladder. Oftentimes we'll just tell parents, just go in before you go to bed. So your child probably went to bed much earlier. Before you go to bed, wake them up, have them go to the bathroom. And then doing some simple rewards. And we would recommend this mostly if just the child's having a lot of nights that they're dry, because we don't want to set them up for if they're having a lot of accidents and they're never able to get that reward. That would be we don't want them to kind of get down on themselves for that. So that's when we would recommend the reward system. Oftentimes we need more than that for nighttime toileting. So the other option would be wearing a wet stop. When we're using the wet stop, we want them to wear underwear at night because it's going to better pick up that device, the wetness. So you're going to want plastic sheets. Sometimes we tell parents to put towels because they're going to have accidents, and it just makes cleanup easier. You also may want to have a baby monitor because you have, as a parent, you have to be able to hear as soon as the child had an accident, and if they're way down the hall, there's a chance you may not hear the alarm go off, which would make this, which would definitely impact the effectiveness of this. So oftentimes if you have a baby monitor, put it in your room. As soon as you hear that, then we'd go to the child and we'd wake them up and have them go to the bathroom. If they're already awake, great, we'd still take them to the bathroom. And we actually are going to increase liquids right before bed because we want the first couple nights for them to have accidents so that we can practice this. So that first 2 nights, when an accident occurs, we wake up the child. We would basically say, no wet pants. We prop the child to the bathroom. We do positive practice, so you're still doing positive practice at night with this. We're going to have the child also, they can change their pajamas. Afterwards, we're going to have them drink more. So parents definitely want to think about, you're going to have some sleepless nights at first when you implement this, so be wary of when you want to start this, because if you have a busy next day, this is not going to be fun, because we want lots of opportunities for the child to be able to wake themselves up at night, lots of opportunities to practice. So if they have an accident, before they go to bed, we're going to drink more water. This only happens the first 2 nights. After that, we're not doing the fluid loading. We're still setting the alarm, we're still doing positive practice, and we would also do rewards for waking up dry. Okay. So I know the last ones were very quick. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. Starting from where you said